Section 11 of Married Love. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ariel Lipshaw. Married Love by Marie Stopes. Section 11, Chapter 9, Children. I am for you and you are for me, not only for your own sake but for others' sakes. Enveloped in you sleep greater heroes and bards. They refuse to awake at the touch of any man but me. Walt Whitman. The mystic in his moment of enlightenment attains through the flux of his personality the realization of oneness with the divine forces of the universe. To ordinary men and women, however, this mystical ecstasy is unknown, and the ordinary human consciousness is far more aware of its separateness than of its oneness with the vital forces of creation. Yet the glow of half-swooning rapture, in which the mystic's whole being melts and floats in the light of the divine force, is paralleled in the rapture of lovers. When two who are mated in every respect burn with the fire of the innumerable forces within them, which set their bodies longing towards each other with the desire to interpenetrate and to encompass one another, the fusion of joy and rapture is not purely physical. The half-swooning sense of flux which overtakes the spirit in that eternal moment at the apex of rapture sweeps into its flaming tides the whole essence of the man and woman, and, as it were, the heat of the contact vaporizes their consciousness so that it fills the whole of cosmic space. For the moment they are identified with the divine thoughts, the waves of eternal force, which to the mystic often appear in terms of golden light. From their mutual penetration into the realms of supreme joy, the two lovers bring back with them a spark of that light which we call life, and unto them a child is born. This is the supreme purpose of nature in all her enticing weft of complex factors luring the two lovers into each other's arms. Only by the fusion of two can the new human life come into being, and only by creating a new life in this way can we hand on the torch which lights our consciousness in the sphere of matter. This mystical and wonderful fact has never yet found the poet to sing its full glory, but in the hearts of all who have known true love lies the realization of the sacredness that is theirs when they are in the very act of creation. Were our bodies specifically organized for this supreme purpose, two human beings would only pass through the sacred fire of mutual fusion in order to create a new life. But, however far our spirits have evolved, our bodies are composed of matter which bears the imprint of the many past phases through which we have reached our present position. And because in the world of the lower animals there is an immense wastage of all the young lives created, and it is necessary that myriads should be conceived in order that a small number should reach maturity, so in our bodies, specialized though they are in comparison with the lower animals, both sexes still produce a far larger number of germs awaiting fertilization than can be actually fructified and imbued with individual life. So profoundly has the course of our history been stamped upon us that each germ, unaware of its own futility if it reaches maturity at an unpropitious moment, is just as insistent in its development as the favored one which follows out the full natural course of its career and gives rise to a new individual. It is utterly impossible, organized as our bodies are at present, for us to obey the dictates of theologians and refrain from the destruction of potential life. The germ cells of the woman, though immeasurably less numerous than the male germ cells, the sperm, yet develop uselessly over and over again in every celibate as well as in every married woman, while myriads of sperm cells are destroyed, even in the process of the act which does ensure fertilization of the woman by the single favored sperm. If the theologians really mean what they say, and demand the voluntary effort of complete celibacy from all men, save for the purpose of procreation, this will not achieve their end of preventing the destruction of all potential life, and the monthly loss of unfertilized egg cell by women is beyond all the efforts of the will to curb. Nature, not man, arranged the destruction of potential life against which ascetic bishops rage. If, then, throughout the greater part of their lives the germinal cells of both sexes inevitably disintegrate without creating an embryo, there can be nothing wrong in selecting the most favorable moment possible for the conception of the first of these germinal cells to be endowed with the supreme privilege of creating a new life. What generally happens in marriage where this is not thought of is that one of the very earliest unions results in the fertilization of the wife, so that the young pair have a baby 9 months or a little more after marriage. Whereas, were they wise, and did they realize the full significance of what they were doing, they would allow at least 6 months or a year to elapse before beginning the supreme task of their lives, the burden of which falls mainly upon the woman. For many reasons it is more ideal to have the children spontaneously and early, but if economic conditions are hard, as they so often are in civilized life, it may be better to marry and defer the children rather than not to marry. See my Wise Parenthood. If the pair married very young and before they could afford to support children, they might wait several years with advantage. An exceptional case is one of the happiest marriages I know. The pair married while they were young students in the university, and 14 years later they had their first child, a splendidly healthy boy. Though such a long interval is certainly not to be universally recommended, as it is said that it may result in sterility, in this instance it was triumphantly better for the two to have lived normally satisfied happy lives than to have waited for 14 years and risked the man's fall. There are many reasons, both for their own and for the child's sake, why the potential parent should take the wise precaution of delay, unless, owing to special circumstances, they cannot expect to live together uninterruptedly. The child, conceived in rapture and hope, should be given every material chance which the wisdom and love of the parents can devise. And the first and most vital condition of its health is that the mother should be well and happy and free from anxiety while she bears it. The tremendous and far-reaching effects of marriage on the woman's whole organism make her less fitted to bear a child at the very commencement of marriage than later on, when the system will have adjusted itself to its new conditions. Not only for the sake of the child, however, should the first conception be a little delayed, but also to secure the lasting happiness of the married lovers. It is generally, though perhaps not always, wise thoroughly to establish their relation to each other before introducing the inevitable dislocation and readjustment necessitated by the wife's pregnancy and the birth of a child. In this book I am not speaking so much of the universal sex relation as to those who find themselves today in the highly civilized, artificial communities of English-speaking people. And in our present society there is little doubt that the early birth of a child demands much self-sacrifice and self-restraint from the man, one of the reflex vibrations of which is his undefinable sense of loss and separation from his bride. This has been confided to me by many men who have been generous enough to trust me with some of the secrets of their lives. Mr. C. is typical of many others of his class. He was quiet and refined, with a strong strain of romantic love, which was entirely centered in his bride. He was manly and sufficiently virile to feel the need of sex intercourse, but he was unaware, as are so many men, of the woman's corresponding need, and he did not give his wife any orgasm. She took no pleasure, therefore, in the physical act of union, which for her was so incomplete. Very shortly after marriage she conceived, and a child was born 10 months after the wedding day. For 2 years after the birth of the child her vitality was so lowered that the sex act was to her so repugnant that she refused her husband any union, and it was thus 3 years after their marriage before they met in anything like a normal way. By that time the long separation from sex life, and the strain on the man, coupled with daily familiarity at home, had dimmed, if not completely destroyed, his sense of romance. The natural stimulation each should exert on the other had faded, so that they never experienced the mutual glow of rapture in their sex union. Another pair suffered similarly. Mr. and Mrs. D. were prevented for several years by the wife's real and fancied ill health from having any intercourse. When, after that time, she recovered, and passionately desired the true marriage relation, the husband felt it to be impossible. To him it would have been, as he expressed it, like raping his sister. Once such a thought has grown into a man's mind, it is very difficult to recapture the first fine early rapture.